So here we are. This is one of our first in a new series of basically getting to ask our students about their experience, going through the high school journey, now getting into college, making those decisions of where they're going to finally go and what their thoughts are about the future. So as your host today, my name is Jared Griffin. I am I am now the creative head at Athena. And basically, that means I have had a lot of experience with the more writing, literary side of the kind of Athena experience. And what we have today is one of my good friends now, not just student, but someone we've worked a lot together with, right? Over kind of now over a year or two, right? So, Karan Kashyap, would you mind sharing with us a little bit who you are, what you're about?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, my name's Karan. I'm from the Shriram School of Ravli, which is in Gurgaon. I recently matriculated to Brown's class of 2025.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm looking to pursue computer science along with possibly a double concentration in applied math or economics. I'm also a pretty big philosophy buff, so I'm definitely looking to study that in some capacity. And yeah, I mean, I play tennis. I'm really into magic, sleight of hand, and yeah, it's a pretty weird one. But yeah, I'm excited to reflect on how this past year has been. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's funny. The magic thing, that didn't even come up until later, right? I had no idea that you had this kind
Yeah.
of secret talent hidden there, right? So I think we had a couple different moments kind of talking about that. And I think I got you to play a couple tricks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's just, I think a part of this process, for us on our end is, learning so much about our students and, just those unexpected kind of details, those intricacies, those hobbies, those talents, right? That's like one of the things that kind of brings a little smile to my face, I feel. So with that in mind, right, I'm looking at where you are currently, and I'm thinking to begin a question, right? I imagine folks who are watching and whatnot, they're going to be thinking a lot about, uh, maybe what you did and how you developed maybe some of your interests, things like that, right? Um, I would ask, I think, perhaps, what did you find challenging maybe about going through, building your profile, applying to college?
Um. So I think with there's sort of two parts to the question, right? So when it comes to building your profile, I think the most challenging part is I think really trying to make it all tie up together cohesively. So I'm like anyone who knows me would know that I tend to be a very logical person, maybe too logical at times. But I think as a result of that, for me, it was a very big thing for there to be like a very strong reason behind everything that I was doing. And I think that actually worked out very well with Athena because a large part of what you'll end up doing at Athena is really just about learning about yourself and why you think the way you do and what that should sort of translate into in terms of how you build your profile. So I think I for a long time I'd been very interested in CS. I kind of had this latent interest in philosophy as well. And then with spending time with Rahul, so talking with you, we managed to navigate through how I would do that. And we spoke about some of the issues I was concerned with. So, like, for example, I had this intersection between CS and healthcare, and that was something I felt strongly about. So, we decided that that could be something I worked on. And I also had this prior fascination with machine learning and the ethics surrounding that. So, we brought that in here as well. With philosophy, that obviously came in with the kind of ethical dilemmas I was grasping with that, and largely with the book I ended up writing on philosophy. So I think in that regard, for me, initially, I think the biggest challenge was just making sure that everything made sense to me, which can be difficult given just how many things you'll end up doing in high school. But I think Athena really helped me sort of distill it down to just a few critical things that would like at the intersection of everything that I loved, and that just worked out really well. And then later on, I think in terms of when we were actually applying, I think the most challenging part is probably having to like talk yourself up and like kind of sell yourself to someone, because I think as a high schooler, that's not something you'll end up doing too often. And you want to say, oh yeah, I'm kind of just really good and I think I'd be awesome, but you don't want to sound like you're arrogant. And I think Athena kind of just helped me realize that it's okay to be cognizant of your strengths and why you love doing what you're doing, and to as long as you're being authentic about what you like and what you're good at, it's all fine, and you should unapologetically be that way. So I think sort of with how we analyzed all the essays we looked at, and again with the experience of writing essay drafts, that became much better. But I think those are probably the two biggest challenges.
To quote the ever eminent Drake, being humble don't work as well as being aware, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, so often we'll come across this challenge, right, of, students being, very, very humble, right? Uh, and I think there's a large cultural element that comes in as well, where in the States, you're much more likely to be raised with kind of that individualistic mentality,
Right.
to be a little more egocentric, we say, right? To kind of be willing to brag and to kind of show off some, right? And, with these schools, certainly the ones among your list, being some of the most selective in the country, right, and in the world, they're looking for those who are, very interesting and unique, to really stand out among that pool. And unfortunately, it does take a little bit of branding, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of savvy, right? A little bit of self-marketing, if you will, to kind of present your case for why you're so awesome, right? And what I noticed immediately when I read your profile and we started working on your plan, right, for what was then, I believe that was your 11th grade heading into your 12th, right?
Yeah.
What I looked at was figuring out, okay, what seems to make you not just unique, I think that's a very hollow idea, hollow word, but really what makes you an individual, right? In the sense that you're a human being, you're a person, right? Each one of us, we have, our own kind of set of interests and talents and skills. And yes, they may be all over the place, right? Multifarious, right? But fundamentally, they often will kind of boil down to an essence. And what you just said is exactly what stuck with me, which is that idea of how ethics is always on your mind, right? Even with all the science and especially the machine learning, algorithms that you're producing, you're thinking always, okay, is this right? You know, is this something we should be doing, right? And in your comment essay, like you said, I saw that it was an essay that you'd written in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And kind of debating this big moral question of should I be going to this event, right? Because there was some kind of tricky issues going on, right, with the other people who were going, right? So I think being able to boil it down, like I said, to what the person is about is something not, something I don't think is probably emphasized enough, maybe, in kind of the overall discussion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I definitely think also like when you guys sent me, actually probably one of the first documents you sent me was the ATS, and I think that really helped because it kind of, when I applied to Athena, there was this long list of what all have you done in the past, what you like, all of that. And then I think when you wrote the ATS, you clearly like spent a lot of time going over all of that and trying to understand who I was. And I think having someone just present it in written format to say, this is what I see, and like this is what I think of you just based on what you've written. I think that just worked really well, because it also gave me an idea to say that, when someone who doesn't really know me yet looks at my profile as it is so far, this is the impression they get. And maybe from here, this is where I want to go. And then it works out well to sort of chart out how you can get there.
I like that. Being concrete, being tangible, right, about exactly maybe what we're talking about, what we think on kind of the intuitive level, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of like your own process, right? You've talked about this, multiple times in your whole kind of process and in our conversations. You like to organize and categorize maybe different facets of an issue, right, in order to make that decision, the most optimal one. And I've kind of even taken that a bit myself. I can say this a million times. I learn probably more from my students often than the other way around, right? You guys are younger, sure, whatever, but you're studying such interesting things and you're thinking on these levels that I know I myself wasn't at that age. And, I'm absorbing just like I am kind of sharing, if you will, right? So really appreciate that. And by the way, guys, the ATS is part of our process, the application theme and strategy, which is a means of us, kind of figuring out what that unique, kind of interesting, specific, thing is about the student, and how they can best use that to develop a plan for their, high school years and then into applying to college. So we like to, I guess, be as specific, maybe, as we can be. Makes something that's a very difficult and ambiguous process something at least a little bit more kind of structured and manageable, even, right? Yeah, I guess I could imagine, wow, having been through all this, looking back, you know, um, maybe what do you think? I guess maybe the question would be, what do you think is kind of the thing that maybe helped you the most in really being able to really attain so much of your dream here? That's what I'm curious about.
But I think it's probably two things. So one is something I kind of touched on earlier, is that there's this sort of really strong emphasis on spending time to reflect and understand yourself. And as someone who's kind of got this philosophical angle to his thinking, I think that just worked really well for me. And I think in doing that, I gained a very profound understanding of why I was doing the things I was doing and why I thought the way I did. And I think sort of later when it came to writing the essays, it just worked out really well because I was able to present a very authentic depiction of who I am, because I truly understood myself. And I think that's something that not too many people focus on too much, because you're just so caught up in high school, you kind of stop to take out the time and just reflect
Yeah.
on life. And so that's definitely one thing that really helped. And I think the other thing is that it's at times, especially when you're like going on writing essays for colleges, like as much as you really like them, it can become very tiresome. But I think the kind of environment we had when we were working on those and editing essays, it was a lot of fun. Like, I mean, especially when we worked on the Common App essay, right? It was so philosophical in nature that we'd be editing the essay and then suddenly we'd go off on a tangent and like debate like what Epicurus thinks, and then we'd come back. And I think that environment was one that like I just really loved. So that just kind of got me to like a mood where I was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this. And yeah, I mean, also like maybe a little bit of advice, it's like I don't think it necessarily helps to have a very strong understanding of who you are unless you can also back that up with action.
Mm.
Because you could have the best motivation for what you want to do, but then if the action following that is weak, like if you think about what an admissions officer is going to think, it's like this child had all the reasons to like go all out with this and like put in so much time, and they didn't do that. So it's like, will they really make like the best use of what we have to offer? Probably not. So I think having that kind of environment that encouraged me to just keep working and just keep moving with the process really helped.
Wow. No, I think you gotta like repeat that several times, right? Gotta like let it drill into people's heads, right? Nauti Seoton, I think that's how you pronounce it, right? Know thyself. That old Greek idea, the ancients, they really, really came back to, kind of three, kind of mantras, you could call them, right? And know thyself, I think, was probably the primary one. Certainly, I think the way that, we think, certainly, Browser and myself, having had, the Princeton experience, there's an element of what some people might call pretension, right? We might call, appreciating a bit of theory, appreciating a bit of kind of that intellectual curiosity and respect for the wisdom of, the grades, those who have come from long, long before us, right? I remember, wow, tons and tons of conversations that, like what you just kind of alluded to, where we weren't getting anything done in a tangible sense, right? We're kind of talking, right? Look
Yeah.
up shop, we would say, right? But it was there was something behind it too, right? Even if we weren't actively trying to make it, that way, we were learning something together in a way, right?
Yeah.
Getting to understand each other better, pushing kind of the boundaries intellectually, exploring new ideas, uh, again, knowing the self as a means of, then being able to take action, like you said, right? Taking the right action, one could say. That's not trivial, you know. Um, I think even beyond college admissions, right? Which is, of course, a little secret, right? We're also going, not just trying to help you guys get into the dream schools, right? But also this is life, right? Even far, far beyond that, you're going to go off to college, you're going to be there for years, and then, you head off into your career, and, geez, these are things that hopefully stick with you guys, right? Uh, these are things that we wish we could have, known during this age, and conversations we wish we could have had, right? I feel like I'm taken back to college even right now, just being able to, engage in some of these concepts and some of that depth that these schools are, yes, very much looking for. If you look at their list of traits, character traits that they're expecting out of their students, you're going to find that intellectual vitality as one of the main ones, right? And we hear that recently you've decided to confirm Brown, right? And even the reasoning that you provided, right? Based on what? Knowing yourself, right? Judging between Chicago and Brown as, I believe you kind of put it, you know, being someone who's liberal arts minded, yes, but having the freedom at Brown through their curriculum, right, to kind of choose your path and experiment outside your main domain, on your own, as opposed to being forced into a very specific set of classes, correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say forced with UChicago, but yeah, I think with the co-curriculum, it is slightly more rigid in that sense because there are just more requirements that you have to fill. So yeah, in that sense, I did appreciate what the open curriculum was offering. Yeah.
I hear you. And even kind of as we maybe come slowly toward a close, I'm curious as to what's on your mind regarding maybe some of your excitement toward your new school where you're going to be joining in the fall, What kinds of things are on your mind regarding this experience that you want to have?
I mean, I spoke to a lot of people at Brown before I made my decision to finally matriculate, and I mean, I heard great things. So I really like the way they've structured their CS curriculum. There's a lot of people who are really into philosophy at Brown. So yeah, I think I'm really excited to sort of just get into class there. There's, I think one of the things we kind of don't necessarily get as much of in high school is the ability to be with a community that's sort of unanimously almost has that like deep set love for learning. So I
Hmm.
think that's something that I'm definitely going to enjoy a lot at Brown.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think part of the open curriculum is that I don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to look like. I know that, I want to get into research. I want to, you know, intern at companies, and I want to, there's all sorts of things that you can do on campus. I also read that there's this group of students, a couple of seniors at Brown, that are debating a lot regarding what Dostoevsky wrote in his books. And I
Hmm.
haven't read his books yet, but again, a professor who I watched online, I forget who it was, made a very strong case for why you should read some of his books. So I'm interested to read some of that before I get to Brown. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to, but I think part of it is not knowing exactly what that's going to be.
Wow. Again, I could probably sound like I'm bragging, or I guess I don't know, flattery, whatever it is, right? But I think you and I are very much on the same page, which is why we get along so well and have for so long, about just being curious, right? Wanting to learn, wanting to know, right? Uh, you know, no one's forcing you to do anything when you go to college, right? No one's forcing you, by the way, when it comes to high school. Like, yes, you have your classes and things you will need to take and be present for, and exams and things, sure. But there's this vast space between kind of your requirements, if you will, and then you have those choices of things that you'll do with maybe your spare time, right? Your extracurriculars, personal projects, whatever they may be, and even like the book that you wrote, for example, philosophy, right? Looking at that and technology, um, there's a line that comes back to me a lot from Oscar Wilde, and I think I learned recently it's not technically a true quote from Wilde. Apparently, it's one that's been attributed to him, but it sounds like him, right? The idea, don't quote me exactly, but to paraphrase, is something along the lines of, it's the books you read when you don't have to that end up defining who you become, right? So I'm not going to pretend. There might have been a lot of books and things that I was asked to do during school, college, whatever, that, maybe I enjoyed and was definitely inspired by in different forms. But so much of what's really ended up shaping me has been those things I did outside of that, right? Books maybe I was encouraged to read from a friend or from even a professor, like outside of class, where you probably going to meet with professors and so forth, sometimes for office hours and whatnot, right? And just be curious. They say, hey, if you want to research into this topic, there's this wealth, right, of knowledge. Well, I know I read blank and blank and blank. You should check out these authors. They'd be really great for whatever this project that you're working on is, right? Not just books. This is general, right? Studying a language, right? You don't have to learn more languages, but right, you can, right? It's all choices, right? So I'm very much excited to see where this all takes you, right? And very much appreciate you being here with us and getting to, you know, just have another one of our good old philosophical kind of pretentious conversations, right?
Yeah,
And
it's been nice.
uh, that's a given, all right? We're going to get into that no matter what. That's always the case, all
Yeah.
right? I would say, if we had to wrap up, kind of sum things up, right? I'd probably ask one last question and then I'll let you go. All right. So perhaps in your eyes, all right, if you had to sum up Athena, right, your experience, 3 words, how'd you describe that?
I'm gonna sound really nerdy when I say this, but
Bring it.
Aristotelian first principles.
Ooh, love it. Love
So I
it.
think like part of what Athena does is, I mean, you alluded to this earlier as well, right? It's the the mission of Athena kind of goes beyond just college, right? That's a short-term goal. It's a very important goal. So you work a lot towards that, but it's not the end. And I think Athena kind of focuses a lot on getting yourself to a point where every day you're just trying to expand the things that sort of lie within your domain of competence, and consequently also to expand what lies within the domain of your possibility. And I think they do that by having this very strong emphasis on really breaking everything down to the principles underlying them. And like one example is sort of practically speaking with college application essays. Like I remember, when we look at the prompts that different colleges had, I think one of the most interesting things was to just sit down and spend time analyzing the prompt itself to try and infer what the college values based on what they're asking you. And there's actually a surprising amount you can learn by doing that. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way I could put it.
I like that. I like that a whole lot. That is definitely one of my lines I've been kind of pushing, right, for quite some time. So I'm happy it's sunk in, right? And here we are. So
And maybe warmth and competence is also another
let's get to
good 3 word one, because that's probably like said the most. But
it. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Uh, Warmth and competence, as this concept, right, from some researchers. I don't believe they were directly from Wharton, but there have been a piece that featured them in their work in this book, in which they talk about the human brand, right? You want to be, displaying, in regardless of college applications or whatever, just life. You want to be displaying a certain warmth, right? Ability to connect and be human, right, with people, while also being able to show them that you're competent at what you're doing, that you're someone who has credibility, someone they can trust, and they perhaps even be impressed by to a certain extent, right? So finding that right mix, that balance, is an ongoing task, an ongoing challenge, and yeah, I think you found a great one yourself. So again,
thank you.
looking forward to seeing where that takes you, and I know that's going to be bright, or what path that is. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap today. And thank you very much, Mr. Karan Kashyap, for joining. All right. And we'll see you.
Thank you.